यूट्यूब ऑन कर दो। यस जहाँ से गो लाइक है बंद कर दिया। मुझे बच्चे देखने ना सेक्शन का यूट्यूब वाला। Yes, good afternoon to offline students. Good afternoon to online students. Yes, online students, please confirm whether audio video slide is all clear to all of you. Yes, I think it's clear. So, in this session, we are going to discuss UPSC GS paper 2 mains questions of polity of year 2023. Yes, good afternoon, Joshua. So, in previous two sessions also, we have discussed polity questions of GS paper 2. That's of year 2025 and 24. Yes, good afternoon, Danny. Yeah, thank you. So I hope you must have gone through those sessions. If not, then please visit after this session, right? Whenever you get time in the upcoming week. So all the polity questions we are going to discuss. So first, let us remind what's the elements of good answer of polity, right? How to write good answer of polity. So like every answer of any subject, right, there is introduction, then there is body, then there is conclusion, right? So you need to first decide what is going to be your body part. That will be as per the demand of the question. Whatever is being asked, you have to write in body part, right? In introduction, you need to set the premise for body part. That could be, suppose, for example, by constitutional article or recent current affair news or definition of the silent concept of the question being given, right? Or maybe background or backdrop of the given theme of the question, right? Or context of the question, right? You have to set premise in introduction. An introduction should ideally be of 2 to 3 lines. For 10 marks question, at maximum 4 to 5 lines. For 15 marks question, it should not go beyond that, right? Because you will get marks mainly for body part and also for conclusion part. For not writing introduction could make you, if you do not write the introduction, then examiner may deduct marks for it. But for introduction, examiner never gives you marks, right? For introduction, you just need to set the flow of the answer, clear? And conclusion obviously should end up the body part of your answer. You get the point? And all these three things introduction, body and conclusion should be interlinked, interrelated, interconnected. It means there should be logical flow in introduction, body and conclusion. You get the point? There should be smoothness while reading your answer. Clear? Then there is structure. Structure of answer. Structure of answer means what is meant for introduction should be written in introduction. What is meant for body should be written in body part. And what is meant for writing in concluding part should be written there only. Right? So, for example, there is structure of our body, human body. Head can never be at the end of our body, or legs cannot be at the top of our body. You get the point? So, the similar approach you need to follow for the answer of your polity, right? For example, you can never write solutions in the beginning. It will always come, in most of the cases, in conclusion, right? Or you cannot write issues in the introduction itself. Most of the cases, it is part of body section. You get the point? So that structure you need to maintain in your answer. So first is structure, second is logical flow, right? So body part will take, suppose, around 1 page of 10 marks question and 1.5 to 2 page in 15 marks question, right? And the conclusion will take minimum 2 to 4 lines, and it can go even half of the page, even full of the page. Half of the page for 10 marks or 1 full page for 15 marks. You get the point? The conclusion could be lengthy, but never the introduction. If you write a lengthy introduction, long introduction, the examiner will assume that you do not know the body part. That's why you are consuming words or space here in introduction. You get the point? Why conclusion could be lengthy? Because quite often in conclusion you need to write suggestions. So whatever issue you pinpoint, you have to give its corresponding suggestion, right? That's why conclusion section sometimes get lengthy. Clear? So that's why it could be minimum of 2 to 4 lines, or it could take half page in 10 marks question or 1 page in 15 marks question. You get the point? But introduction should never be lengthy. Clear? Yeah. That depends on the question, right? If the given theme is only of current affairs, then you should not begin with that current affair, right? Here you need to set the backdrop or silent concept, etc. Because otherwise, you started with the current affair theme, that will also be there in body part. So introduction and body, right? Point will get repeated. The same point is in introduction, same point is in body part. That's why you need to make sure that there is no repetition, right? That's why structure is important, right? So there is no hard and fast rule that, or you should not have any rigidity in your mind that every answer you will start with definition, every answer you will start with current affair, right? Or every answer you will start with constitutional article and so on. There should not any rigidity in your mind. You should be flexible, adaptable, moldable as per the question. You get the point? So then third is presentation. Third is presentation. Yes, online students, whatever we are discussing, right? If you have any doubt, please write in your comment box. Third is presentation, right? So there are 2 ways to write a good answer. One is bullet format, second is paragraph format, right? And students get confused which format to follow. You can follow any format, bullet format or paragraph format, right? But you need to make sure that you provide subheading as per sub part of the question. Like you have been asked issues, then provide heading as issues, or you have been asked significance, provide subheading significance. Then write either in bullet or in paragraph format. If you are writing in paragraph format, make sure that the paragraphs are small, right? Ideally, paragraph should be in between 2 to 4 lines at max. I found that students write very lengthy paragraphs like 10 lines to 15 lines and so on. Never. You get the point? For each idea, right? There should be separate paragraph. That's the formula you need to keep in mind, principle keep in mind, right? Or you could be flexible. Certain answers requires to be written in paragraph, right? Certain answers require to be written in bullet, right? So you could be flexible also in your approach. So bullet format you should specially follow for the lengthy answers, right? And paragraph format you need to follow especially for those questions you do not know much about the answer. There you can write paragraphs, right? Because in bullet format the examiner will get to know that you know only about 2 lines or 2 points. But in paragraph format, by using the words etc and so on, you can little bit give an expression that you know decent about the question, right? So paragraphs become handy when you have little information, and bullets become handy when you have too much information about the questions, right? And for the questions you know reasonably about the answer, right? Then you can choose either bullet or paragraphs. Clear? That's the standard format you need to follow. In some answers, you can make table. Thumb rule for table is whenever you are being asked differences, right? Present it with table, right? Then you can also draw flow charts. Especially when you need to write just 5-6 points of the given body part. For that you can make flow charts. Certain flow charts you need to make it ready in your mind to apply in the examination, right? Like the sun format. In the sun you will write the subheading and points will be as the radiations of the sun, or half sun format, right? Half sun format, here you will write the subheading and radiation as the points, right? Or you can make a triangle also. If there are only 3 points you need to write. If there are 4 points, then make a square, right? If you remember, suppose recall 1 or 2 more point extra, then the sides could be bifurcated and there you can write 2 or 3 more points extra. You get the point? So these flowcharts you can make in your answer, right? But do remember, these flowcharts will not make you fetch marks. The marks will be given for content, what the points actually are. So content is the king. Do remember, never ever compromise the content. Clear? Flowcharts will help you, suppose maybe half an hour mark extra than your competitors. You get the point? Out of 10, 3 marks will be given for content, but you may get 3.5 marks for making flowcharts. You get the point? But the real marks will be awarded for content. So some students sometimes assume that they do not need to read, they do not need to understand, they do not need to remember, they do not need to link it with current affairs, they do not need to write examples, etc. By just drawing flowcharts, they will get selected. No. Right? Flowcharts are just meant to improve your answers aesthetics. Right? It will make your answers look good. You get the point? But the real marks will be awarded for content. Clear? You get the point? So that's all about presentation. Clear? Then you need to substantiate your points with examples. Examples are very important. More the examples you write, more the marks you will get. You get the point? So try to link as many as examples from current affairs or from the recent past in your answers. Right? Then there is certain value addition points you can add into your answers to make it further enriched. That's basically constitutional articles or various commissions recommendations. For example, Punchi Commission, Sarkariya Commission, Second Administrative Reform Commission recommendations, etc. But do not overuse it. Right? Do not overuse it. It should be applied when and where it is necessary. You get the point? So that you need to remember. So this is all about elements of good answer of polity. Yes. Suppose there is a question regarding President is just a nominal head, well, see, Council of Ministers enjoys real power. Should we opt for points or paragraph? See, you have just made an assertion that president is a nominal head and CEO enjoys real power. Whether you will write in bullet or paragraph format, that depends on the question and also your personal preference, in which format you are comfortable in. Certain candidates are comfortable only in paragraphs. So use paragraphs, do not force you to write in bullets. And many candidates are comfortable in bullet format, right? So do not force yourself to write in paragraphs. But sometimes the question is itself is such where you require to be write in paragraph or in bullet. For example, I have given you the lengthy questions. In previous session, you might have seen there are so many lengthy questions in 10 marks question. There I have recommended to write in bullet. There was one analytical question, right? There I have recommended to write in paragraphs, where you need to write so many opinions of yours. You get the point? So there it would be better to write in paragraphs, right? So regarding suppose you have been asked about real and nominal heads of the state. There you can adopt bullet format, or even you can make flowcharts. You get the point? For example, executive, right? Then it consists president, then it consists PM, then here you are making president as head of state, PM as head of government, and so on, right? So this information could be presented through flowchart also, right? But when you are being asked about the opinion, whether president play any substantive role in Indian polity or not, then you need to adopt paragraph. That you can't give in bullet. You get the point? So question demand may make you to write in bullet, or maybe in flowchart, or maybe in tabular format, or maybe in paragraph. You get the point? So just be flexible while writing the answers. Clear? While quoting the articles, that also dependent. For example, in this flowchart also you can mention that president article 52, right? PM article 74, and so on, right? In flowchart also you can write the article, or there is one this format if the question demands, like tabular format. Here article you are writing and specifying the given articles. So here you have followed tabular format, right? Or you can make bullet format also by underlining the article and providing the content, right? Or you can write about in paragraph also. For example, president plays a predominant role when there is any constitutional crisis, right? Political crisis, providing stability, for example, through article 74 and so on. You get the point? So there is no hard and fast rule that this thing will be done in this manner or that thing will be done in that manner, right? So be flexible in adopting your approach. So basically you should be aware of all the approaches and apply it according to the question. You get the point? So now coming to the types of conclusion that has been discussed with Indrajit sir also, right, in his geography PYQ Mela, right? So there are different types of conclusion. For example, one is summary conclusion, that is adopted by specifying the summary of the analysis you have done in body part. Then there is suggestive, where you are writing solutions, right? In polity you can quote commissions or committees recommendations, right? Then there is balanced, when you have been asked both pros and cons, then you have to provide your own opinion on the given theme, right? There you are providing a balanced opinion. Then you can give a visionary conclusion also. You can give a futuristic outlook to the given theme of the question, right? Or you can quote value based conclusion, which means quotation based conclusion. If you remember any quote of Gandhiji, B.R. Ambedkar, etc., then you can quote in the conclusion also, right? But again, sometimes students, what they do, they remember like hundreds of quotes, so that they make a principle or formula that they will write the quote in every answer, right? In conclusion or every answer. Don't do that, right? Because many times quote does not fit the answer of your question, right? That's why it appears very inappropriate, and it may even cause you get your marks deducted by examiner because it is not fitting in your answer, right? So do not over apply the quotes. If the quote is appropriately fitting in your answer, then only apply it, otherwise not. You get the point? So let's start. You will get to understand how this logical flow, structure, presentation, right? Or examples, the use of constitutional articles, committee commission recommendations, or the kinds of conclusions that we have discussed can be applied in your answer, right? Yes, online students, be active in raising your doubts in the comment section, right? So far so clear. So now discussing the first question of 2023 UPSC GS2 paper of mains, right? That's of polity. Constitutionally granted judicial independence is a prerequisite of democracy, right? And you have been asked to comment on it. So this is a statement based question, right? And there is tail word named comment. Comment means you need to provide your opinion on it. So in the conclusion, you have to provide the opinion. So here your opinion is specifically asked, right? So here you have to provide a balanced conclusion, opinion based conclusion. Clear? Sometimes students avoid providing their opinion. They may conclude with a futuristic conclusion or suggestive conclusion, but don't do it, because the tail word itself is asking you to provide your opinion, right? So for these statement based questions, what you can do, you can break the silent subparts of the statement, silent subparts of the statement, right? So one is constitutionally granted judicial independence. Constitutionally granted, it means there are constitutional provisions which provides judicial independence. So that should be part of your answer, right? Like appointment of judges or security of tenure, like they will retire by 65 years of age for Supreme Court, right? Add 62 for High Court. There is difficult removal process. It could be done by Parliament, that too by 2/3 majority, right? And so service conditions cannot be varied to their disadvantage. That shall be determined by Parliament by law. Then you need to write about Chief Justice under the supervision of Chief Justice. Supreme Court will appoint its own staff, right? Service conditions are also determined by Chief Justice, and so on. So these points you need to write in your answer. Clear? Then second thing is judicial independence. Then second is judicial independence. So you need to define what is judicial independence. Third is it's a prerequisite for democracy. How judicial independence is essential for democracy. That also you need to write, right? So these things, these three things are mandatory to be there in your answer. So how you will structure it? So will you write first the constitutional guarantees, or will you write first the concept of judicial independence, or will you write first how it is prerequisite for democracy? Hmm. 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 Yeah. So here, one thing you need to remember, you said you will start with constitutionally guaranteed provisions, right? No, you will start with concept of judicial independence. That should be there in your introduction, right? Concept of judicial independence. It means it should be independent or autonomous of executive and legislature. Executive and legislature should not control judiciary. You get the point? Then you need to write about need of judicial independence for democracy, right? First you are defining judicial independence, then you are providing why we need judicial independence, especially for democracy, right? For example, for ensuring rule of law, right? Or for enforcing fundamental rights, for ensuring constitutionalism, for ensuring constitutional supremacy, for ensuring that there is no arbitrary exercise of power by executive or legislature, right? For ensuring trust of people over the constitution, over the democracy, and so on, right? Then you will prescribe that constitution forefathers were aware that judicial independence is necessary. Then constitution how specify the provisions for ensuring judicial independence. You get the point? Then in conclusion, you have said it very well that you will in brief pinpoint the issues, right? For example, over independence could lead to judicial authoritarianism. Judiciary may become more powerful vis-a-vis executive and judiciary. That constitution does not imagine or does not want, right? Because constitution wants limited government. Every institution should have limited powers. You get the point? For example, collegium system is making sure that judiciary has its own men in the system and thereby ensuring that judiciary overpower executive and legislature by way of judicial overreach, right? That line you will write. Then in the conclusion, you will make your opinion. Judicial independence is necessary. For that, these provisions should be followed in letter and spirit, but we need to make sure that judiciary does not become overpowered vis-a-vis executive and legislature. For that, we can bring NJC, etc. Or we can revive National Judicial Appointment Commission, so to make sure that executive, civil society also have the role to play in judges' appointment. You get the point? That's how you will end. Or you can also add on one more opinion that judicial independence is necessary, but also we need to make systemic reforms for effective functioning of judiciary. Right? Then only we will able to deliver justice to people in timely manner, in effective manner, right? Like provisioning of adequate infrastructure, staff, latest technologies, right? Or simplification of procedures, or coordination between police, prosecution, and courts, and so on. You get the point? That's also your opinion, that you are considering that this factor is important, but other factors are also important, right? So there are two shades of your opinion. First is you are recognizing that there is limitation in judicial independence and you are offering solution for it. Then second is that you are aware that this factor is important, but this factor is not only one for effective functioning of judiciary. There are other factors also which need to be get due priority or due importance. You get the point? So that's how you will conclude your answer, right? So here in conclusion, you need to write in paragraphs. Your conclusion could be of 5-6 lines, right? So you need to write in paragraphs. Issues in judicial independence, right? In 1 line or 2 line. Then suggestions. Then other factors also important, right? Then judicial independence also will be in paragraph, the definition part. And this need of judicial independence, you can either write in subheading, bullet format, or you can make flowchart also. You get the point? Then what are the constitutional provisions? Here do not over explain the points. You need to just about security of tenure, retirement age, right? And service conditions cannot be varied, and so on. But make sure all 10 points of security of tenure are being written, but that too in concise manner, because this is 10 marks question. You will be given around 1.45 page to write the answer. 45 page, why? Because 15% of your page, or sorry, 25% of your page will be occupied by question, English question, and its translation in Hindi. You get the point? So it means you have, 1.75 page. So that's why this constitutional guaranteed provision should be written in concise manner. Then this need should be substantiated with examples, right? Write case laws. For example, Vishakha guidelines for enforcement and wider interpretation of fundamental rights, right? Or talk about Menka Gandhi case, ensuring due process of law, ensuring rule of law, limited government, right? And so on. So these case laws should be there in your answers, right? Then only you will get the full marks. You get the point? There are multiple doubts here. So let me see. First, the concept of judicial independence. Yes, good. Body begins with short flow chart of prerequisite. Yes, good. Then body talks about constitutional guarantee. Then sir, more focus should be on prerequisite or naming of constitutional guarantees. No, prerequisite. Focus should be on prerequisite. Constitutional safeguards you can write in concise and precise format, right? Short format. Clear? But do not write just 4 points of constitutional safeguards. Write all 10 points of constitutional safeguards, right? But in short manner. Clear? So there you can make 2 columns also, because you have limited space there, right? Constitutional safeguards, right? Here security of tenure, mode of appointment, difficult removal process. Here service conditions cannot be varied to their disadvantage, right? Or Supreme Court will appoint its own staff, separation of power under Article 50, and so on. You get the point? So that in the limited space you could write all the points. You get the point? Because why I am emphasizing on this? Because suppose if you write just 4 points, examiner will think that you have missed 2 points. So now he will be forced to deduct marks of you. But if you give mention, brief mention of all the points, examiner will think that you have written all the points. Now I have to give full marks to you. You get the point? So prerequisite of democracy already discussed, right? Constitutional safeguards. Then even you can mention judicial verdict, that in Keshwan Bharti case, Supreme Court do acknowledge that judicial independence is part of basic structure of the Constitution. So before conclusion, you can add this line also after constitutional safeguards. Clear? You get the point? So far so clear? Now coming to the next question. Who are entitled to receive free legal aid? Assess the role of National Legal Service Authority rendering free legal aid in India. Right? So again, it's a 10 marks question. Right? The first part of the question is quite direct. You have been asked who are entitled. Right? You need to write about economically weaker section, below the prescribed income limit. Right? Do not specify the income limit, because it changes periodically. Right? So if you prescribe the income limit, there is a possibility you may do the factual error. So if you do a factual error, do remember, examiner will deduct the marks. So you should write the facts only if you are 100% sure that it is correct. Right? Otherwise, fact should be accompanied by these words, prefix or suffix, like approximately, around, nearby, near about, and so on. Right? Then you can talk about SC, ST, workmen, and so on. They are entitled to receive free legal aid. Clear? Then second is parties. Second part of the question is quite important. Assess the role of National Legal Service Authority in providing free legal aid. So here you need to write about role. It's directly asking question. Then you have to assess us also. It's not specify. The tail word is not specify. The tail word is not elaborate. The tail word is not explain. Tail word is assess. So it means you need to assess. It means whether the National Legal Service Authority is fulfilling its role or not. So basically you need to write about significance and the challenges. You get the point? But this is 10 marks question. So already your space will be occupied by first part of the question, then role of the National Legal Service Authority, then you have to write significance, then challenges. If you are writing challenges, then your conclusion will obviously be suggestions. You get the point? So this answer is going to be very lengthy. What you need to do, that this significance and challenges you will write in brief manner. Role, right, a little bit more weightage, right, and in role you need to substantiate with examples also. Role should be substantiated with examples, right, and significance challenges should be written in brief, and this entitled to receive free legal aid also should be written in brief. You get the point? So conclusion as per the question is suggestive. What will be the introduction? I have told you that introduction should set premise for your body part. So how will you start or set the tone of your answer for the body part? Yes. Yes. So here constitutional article based introduction could be there. Which article provides for free legal aid? 39A, introduced by 42 Constitutional Amendment Act. Right? That's the one approach of introduction. That's fine. Second approach could be definition. you can define free legal aid, right? So what is free legal aid? You can define in introduction. Clear? Or third could be any recent Lok Adalat being conducted by National Legal Service Authority, or any famous case which received free legal aid by National Legal Service Authority. But this I think you should avoid, because this will act as example in this section, role of National Legal Service aid. So best is either start with constitution article or definition. Either use a 10 marks question. Do not use the both methods. Right? Your introduction should be crisp, because it's a 10 marks question. Already question is quite lengthy. You get the point? So for lengthy question, always write in bullet format. And do remember, I have emphasized in the previous session also, that you need to remember this thumb rule. You need to remember this thumb rule, that for lengthy questions, right, never ever try to explain the points. Right? Never ever try to explain the points. You need to just write in very concise manner. Right? And your focus should be not on the you can say over elaboration or over emphasis to the addressal of subpart. You get the point? Do not like focus more on role, like you are just delving into role of the National Judicial Appointment, National Legal Service Authority, right? Your focus should be on addressing every subpart of the question, right? Every subpart should be addressed. For example, who are entitled, role, then significance, then challenges, then also solutions. Because if you suppose write role, you have written suppose 10 points in role, right? And that too with lot of examples, right? Examiner will be tempted to give you marks, but examiner has to deduct marks for it. Why? Because you have not addressed this tail word, assess. Examiner will think that you have missed significance and challenges. That's why examiner will deduct marks. You get the point? So whenever there is lengthy question, do not overemphasize one subpart, right? Or thumb rule is basically don't neglect any subpart. Every subpart should be there in your answer. You get the point? Do not miss any subpart. So even give a little less weightage to any subpart, that's fine. But subpart should be there in your answer. Right? Do not let examiner feel that you have missed challenges, you have missed significance. Clear? So starting section 39A, you can start with, which asks the state to provide free legal aid so that justice is not denied to any citizen. Then what are the entitled territories? Citizen with annual income below prescribed limit, SC, STs, women, children, victim of trafficking, beggars, person with mental illness, victim of mass disaster, etc. For this you can draw a flow chart, right? Because flow chart you need crisp points, right? In flow charts you can't have elaborated points, right? So these points are quite crisp. So here you can draw a flow chart, right? And this role you could write in points format, right? And I also found that many students, what they do, right, first section by flowchart, second section also by flowchart, third section also by flowchart, even introduction by flowchart, conclusion by flowchart, and so on. Please don't do it. Don't overdo the flowcharts, right? Ideally, one section of the answer should be written in flowchart, one should be in bullet format, intro, conclusion, most probably in paragraphs. If suggestions are there, then in conclusion also point format, right? That's how you should do in your answer. How you will reduce your time? By flowchart or bullet format? No, bullet format become handy if there is a shortage of time, not the flowcharts. Okay, So see, there is a possibility that suppose 15 marks question, 10-15 marks question you have written in 2 hours 15 minutes, and you have left 45 minutes to attempt all 10 questions of 10 marks, right? So here what I will suggest you, to avoid introduction, write the body part and a brief conclusion. That's the first thing, right? What section of the answer you can skip in this situation? Introduction, right? And conclusion you can make it short, clear, but never ever miss the conclusion. Even if uh, uh, even if there is shortage of time, write even a one line conclusion. In that scenario, examiner expect you to write one line conclusion, right? Introduction you can skip in that scenario. Then the body part. Here paragraphs are not recommended when you have short of time. Either follow bullet format, or you can draw flowchart also. Even I will say bullet will take lesser time than flowcharts, because in flowcharts you need to make lines, right? But in bullet format we're just making heading and writing the points. You get the point? But it's also up to you that whether you are able to write in bullet format or in flowchart format or in paragraph format faster. That's up to you, right? It also sometimes vary from candidate to candidate, but mostly bullet format is the fastest format to write. You get the point? Then what is the role of NALSA? Like, it makes policy for legal aid across the country. Then it also establishes legal aid clinics so that people get to know about their legal rights, legal procedure, formalities, how to file petitions and so on. Then organize Lok Adalat, also conducts awareness campaign, right? So by these 4 points your answer will get over, but try to make more points, like it established coordination between different state legal service authority, or it supervise the functioning of legal service authority, right? It review its own policy and make necessary correction. So by this you can smartly make 4-point answer to 8 to 10-point answer. You get the point? So here you need to be smart, that your points should not be look like they are being repetitive, but at the same time you are making sub points out of single point in this manner that all these points are looking distinct, right? So that's how you need to write. And you can give examples like recently held Lok Adalat has able to resolve more than million cases in a single day, right? Or recently awareness campaign was held in Jammu Kashmir University, Delhi University by NALSA for awareing the people and so on. You get the point? So now you need to do assessment also. So it provides opportunity for the lawyers to provide free legal aid to the citizens, to serve public, to do social welfare, social well-being, right? And it also helps to resolve lakhs of cases through Lok Adalats every year, right? It also makes help to make people aware about their legal rights, right? But challenges remain, like lack of awareness among the beneficiaries, poor quality of free legal aid under this, irregular conduct of Lok Adalats, infrequent conduct of legal aid camps and so on, right? So that you need to write. So here you see points are written in very brief, concise manner. In this manner you need to write, clear? Or you can draw a table also. Here you are writing suppose importance, here you are writing challenges, clear, and writing the points. So it will help you to write in concise. Second, it will help you to utilize the given space judiciously, right? And it will also make the presentation better, clear? Then in conclusion you need to write certain suggestions, right? So strict review of impaneled lawyers' performance, right? Better remuneration for them so that they could provide quality aid. Then Lok Adalats could be made permanent institutions and so on, clear? So that should be the part of your conclusion. Yes, online students, please be active in comment box, just like you have mentioned what will be your introduction, body, conclusion in previous question. I expect you to write in the next question also. And if you have any doubt, any suggestion how to make a better answer, right, you can mention it in comment box. Be active in comment box, right? So far so clear? So here in conclusion, while writing suggestions. You can quote Law Commission also. Law Commission recommends that better remuneration should be given and regular review of the impaneled lawyers should be done and so on. Right? Clear? Now coming to the next, that's states in India seem reluctant to empower urban local bodies, both functionally and financially. Comment. So again, tailword is comment. So your opinion is sought. Right? So see, the word is here, seem. Please remember this thumb rule also. Reread the question multiple times. Right? 2 times, 3 times or 4 times. So suppose for 10 marks question, you are supposed to write the answer in 8 minutes. Right? So please devote at least 1 minute out of this 8 minutes for reading the question. Right? Because see, if you reread the question, states in India seem reluctant to empower urban local bodies, both functionally as financially. Right? So here the question is not asking you directly that states are not revolving functions and finances to urban local bodies. It is saying seems reluctant. It means there are certain states who are giving functions and finances, and there are certain states who may not be giving such functions and finances to urban local bodies. Right? So that should be there in your answer. For example, you can assume that West Bengal, Kerala, right, etc. governments have given adequate finances and functions to urban local bodies. Get the point? Or you can make recent examples also, like Delhi municipal corporations has been merged, or Bangalore municipal corporations has been divided into 5 parts and so on, thereby giving greater powers. So that reference should be there, because this is part of your question. 99% of the candidates will overlook this thing. But if you just mention it in one line, you will get more marks than your competitors, because you have addressed that part of question, that sub part of the question, which is overlooked or ignored or not identified by other candidates. Right? You get the point? Then it says that urban local bodies are not given adequate functions and finances. Obviously, you need to write how functions are not being devolved to urban local bodies and how adequate finances are not being devolved to local bodies. So that need to be written separately. Do not club it. Right? So how functions are not devolved and how finances are not devolved. Right? Both need to be written separately. Clear? So that's basically the body part of your answer. So now tell me, how will you start your answer? What will be your introduction and what will be your conclusion? How will you set the premise? Yes, online students, you also make the comment. How will you set the premise of this question in your answer? Introduction, urban local body, historical perspective. No. For this, do not write historical perspective. It could be an introduction, maybe approved introduction, but it will not set the logical flow in your answer. Because the question is not about how since independence the urban local bodies are evolving, or since independence the functions or the finances are not being available to urban local bodies and so on. The question is about today, present context, that urban local bodies are not being given finances and functions. So historical context you should avoid. Right? So first is very obvious that you can talk about constitutional article like 74 Constitutional Amendment Act 1993, right? Part 9A, right? Article 243 O2ZZ deals with urban local bodies. That's one. There is another which could be very appropriate way of introduction is, which will set logical flow in your answer, is describing role of urban local bodies briefly in 2-3 lines. Why urban local body matters? Why urban local bodies are important? Because of which we need to give them adequate functions and finances. You get the point? For that, you can give a context also. For example, currently around, I think 1/3 population is residing in urban local bodies, and by UN report, by 2050, it will be more than 50 or even 60% population. And to serve this large population, we need strong urban local bodies to provide them civic amenities, be it of street lighting, sanitation, drainage, right, street roads, garbage disposal, and so on. So you are setting the premise. Then you are writing that, but urban local bodies in India are seem to be lacking finances and functions. You get the point? So by specifying the context and the role, you will set the premise for your body part. You get the point? So by this introduction, you yourself, I think, observing how there is a flow, a smoothness in reading the answer. You get the point? Yes, introduction, need for urban local bodies. Yes, very good. That you need to write. Role of urban local bodies or need for providing such functions and finances. Right? That should be your introduction. Clear? Simplest is constitutional article. That I think everybody will write. But if somebody has read the question properly, then we'll specify role of urban local bodies as need of urban local bodies or need of providing functions and finances to urban local bodies as introduction. You get the point? Then write need. You need to want to specify this role of urban local bodies through flow chart. See, in the given statement, right, there is no mentioning of role, right? It's straightforwardly dealing with urban local bodies lacking functions and finances, right? So if you give emphasis to role of urban local bodies by drawing a flow chart in your answer, it means examiner will think that you are writing something which is not asked in the question, right? And for that, marks will be deducted. Because by drawing a flow chart, right? See, this is the page you will get. This space will be occupied by the question. And you are saying that first 2 lines will be of 74 Constitutional Amendment Act, Article 243, or to ZZ and so on, Part 9A. And then you will draw a flow chart. So it means you occupy around 30% of your page to the flow chart, to the role of urban local bodies, right? So examiner will think that you are writing something which is not asked in the question. For that, he will deduct the marks. Because in the UPSC notification, it is clearly written, the credit shall be given to the answers which are written in precise and concise manner. Right? Precise means whatever is being asked, you are just answering that. Right? Concise means you are not over explaining the things. Your points are in limited words, but those limited words are self-explanatory. Right? That's why you should avoid role through flowchart. Get the point? Instead, make this as introduction in just 2-3 lines. You are prescribing the role. Then straightforward comes to the lack of finances to urban local bodies and lack of functions to urban local bodies. You get the point? So that also you need to remember. Sometimes students are not get to know why their marks are being deducted by UPSC examiner. They think that by writing over, they will get more marks. No, never. Right? You need to be confined yourself within the boundary set by the question. Clear? Then you say body argument in favor of states being reluctant, argument against. That I think is not required here. Argument against or argument in favor. Right? Before writing like states are not devolving functions and finances, After suppose writing in introduction the role, right? Make a one line here separately. See what you can do is in this answer, this is the page you will get. This will be occupied by the question. Here you are writing the introduction, right? Makes a box. Make a box, a small box here. Here write that certain states has given adequate functions and finances to urban local bodies like West Bengal, Kerala, etc. Right? But most of the states are seemed to be reluctant to give powers to urban local bodies. You get the point? Then start afterwards how the functions are lacking and how the finances are lacking. You get the point? And for this you can draw a table, right? Here you can write functions, here you can write finances, or you can write it separately also. Get the point? Horizontally also, like first functions, then finances. That's your choice. Clear? Why I'm saying to make a inbox here? Because here you're emphasizing to the examiner that you have read this word carefully and addressing this. Others are ignoring it. I am giving emphasis to it. That's a part of question. The statement, each and every word of the statement is part of question, and I'm addressing this part of the question. That's why I should be given 1 marks extra or 2 marks extra than my competitors, because competitors has missed this section. I have addressed it. You get the point? That's how you will do. Clear? Then how will you conclude? Body part is clear that you need to write how functions are missing and finances are missing. How will you conclude? You can write suggestions, second ARC recommendations, right? Second ARC has recommended activity mapping. That keyword should be there in your suggestion, right? Or State Finance Commission recommendation should be mandatorily implemented. You get the point? Or better grasp the ground realities than state government, I think. Similar kind of quote. That quote could not be in conclusion. Here in this quote, what you are highlighting, a issue that urban local bodies are lacking truth, right? That's why does not have real powers. So here the quote is signifying a issue. That's why this quote, if you want to write, you can write in the inbox that we were discussing, or in this function part of your answer, right? So here, after writing all the points of lack of devolution of functions, like certain important functions are kept with state government, for example land or town planning, housing, etc., right? Then you can talk about state government themselves are not willing to give powers because it will erode their powers, right? Already constitution is biased towards centers, so whatever little power states have, they are unwilling to share it with local bodies. You get the point? And there is no public pressure for the state government to give more and more powers to local bodies and so on, right? And it has resulted that urban local bodies are lacking real truth, right? So that will be fit in this section, not in conclusion. Here either should be conclusion suggestive, so your quote should offer a solution, right? Or a futuristic assertion, right? The urban local bodies need to be empowered to tackle the challenges of 21st century, to prepare India for 2050 and so on. You get the point? So that should reflect in conclusion. You get the point? So here your intro will misfit. So your quote will be misfit. Your quote will be better fit in function part. Clear? So this is actually part of structuring and logical flow. That's why I'm emphasizing it, right? So this quote will disrupt your logical flow and disrupt your structure. You get the point? So what are the issues in finances? That most of these state finance commissions recommendations are not implemented, right? and the states, local bodies get very low share in state share of taxes, right? Or the taxes which were being given to local bodies like octroi, entertainment tax has been merged with GST, or the property tax etc. sometimes are not given to local bodies to impose, or even if they are given, local bodies are unable to impose such taxes because of possibility of local resistance, right? So they are dependent on grants for center and state, and these grants are tied to schemes. That means such grant will be implemented for that particular purpose. So they do not get untied grants, right? So that's how you could write about finances. Clear? And there should be corresponding solution for every issue you pinpoint. So that's why your conclusion should be of suppose 75% of the page. You will write suggestions for functions and also finances. Clear? DPSP, yes, Article 40 you can refer, right? We are starting with role, right? We can conclude with constitutional article. For example, if these suggestions get implemented in true spirit, then we will able to realize the objective set in Article 40 and also in Part 9A or in 74 Constitutional Amendment Act. The real objectives of 74 Constitutional Amendment Act will get realized if we implement these recommendations earnestly, right? So here we are using constitutional article as part of conclusion. You get the point? So I've told you that's why you need to be flexible to use constitutional articles, Supreme Court bodies, case laws, or committee commissions recommendations, right, as per the demand of the question. Clear? You get the point? So that's all about this answer. And you can also talk about parastatal bodies, that special purpose vehicles like water sewage boards or transport corporation, etc. They are beyond the control of local bodies. Sometimes for specific municipal function, a special body is being created. That erodes the power of local bodies. Or you can talk about the bureaucracy does not want to get subordinated to urban local bodies. DM does not want to become a subordinate to urban local body. Or the electricity board officials, etc. does not want to remain under the authority of urban local bodies and so on. That's also you can write, right? And you can quote Finance Commission also, that 15th Finance Commission also observed that urban local bodies are lacking functions and finances, right? And then you can write conclusion and mention second year's recommendations in your concluding section. And please do not write this word conclusion or introduction. Many times I found in answers that candidates write the word introduction, then body, then conclusion. No. It is understood that first few lines of your answers are of introduction. The main part of your answer is, middle part of your answer is body part, and last few lines of your answer are part of conclusion. Clear? So here suggestive conclusion will work. And one more thing you can do, like this is 10 marks question, right? You may not have space to write conclusion. For that purpose, you can give suggestions in paragraph format. If you have space left, then write in bullet format. Then if you do not have space, then write the suggestion in paragraph format. For example, being given in this reference answer, right? So citizen participation, right, or good governance or activity mapping, etc. should be done for empowering urban local body in terms of functions, and strict implementation of State Finance Commission recommendations, greater tax devolution, and so on should be given for empowering urban local bodies financially. You get the point? So here paragraph format also could be handy. Clear? So just be flexible. Clear? Yes, online students, please write the structure of this answer also, and what special thing you will keep in mind while answering this question. That also please tell in the comment box. So compare and contrast the British and Indian approaches to parliamentary sovereignty. So the question is directly asking you to compare and contrast the British and Indian approach to parliamentary sovereignty. Get the point? So here, whenever you get this kind of question, compare, contrast, differentiate, etc., thumb rule is draw a table, right? Through table, you need to specify Indian approach and British approach. You get the point? Then the key tail word is compare and contrast. Contrast means points of difference. While you are comparing, you only when you compare certain things, you do not only differentiate or contrast the things, but also find out the similarities, right? So in this answer, you need to write similarities also. You get the point? So for similarities, you can follow bullet format. Here, similarities like both follow parliamentary form of government where executive is part of parliament, right? Parliament has been given the task of law making, then law implementation review by the executive, right? And both have two houses, that's Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? And similar procedure is there for ordinary bill and money bill in both parliament. Then both parliament allocates executive by passing the budget, right? And in both parliamentary system, the president or the crown, the head of state, is part of parliament, right? And both have the right to address the joint sessions of parliament and so on. And in both system, the bill will become law if they are assented by crown and president respectively. So these points of similarity you should write, that you can follow either bullet format or you can draw a flow chart also, right? You can draw a flow chart also. Similarities, then write the similarities, right? So that's the first part, sub part of the question. Second is contrast. So what is the contrast? In British, what else? See, read the question properly. Approaches to parliamentary sovereignty. Your point is valid, but your point should be written in last, right? Because this point is not directly dealing with approach to parliamentary sovereignty, right? So your first point should be relating to approach to parliamentary sovereignty, right? So what will be that? Yeah. So in Britain there is unwritten constitution. In India there is written constitution. That's why parliament could make any law, even constitutional law, by ordinary legislative procedure. But in India, parliamentary law cannot go against constitution, and also parliament, if want to make any constitutional law, that's constitutional amendment, then have to done by special procedure specified in Article 368, right? Then you can talk about judiciary, follow procedure established by law while examining the or reviewing the law made by parliament. But in India, due process of law is followed after Menka Gandhi case judgment, right? Then there is division of power in India. There is unitary system in UK. That's why parliament can make law on any subject, but in India only on union and concurrent list, right? Then you can talk about this point I forgot. Intro, what is parliamentary sovereignty? Yeah, we will discuss. Table to differentiate good, checks and balance, shadow parliament. You can talk about shadow cabinet also. Shadow cabinet system is there in Britain. In India, it is shadow committees. That's department relating standing committees, right? That you can talk about. And the point is, in Britain, they believe that parliament has the highest moral wisdom. That's why parliamentary law cannot be unfair, unjust, etc. Right? That's why parliament cannot do any wrong law, cannot make any wrong law. Right? But in India, we put such highest wisdom, higher moral wisdom into constitution. That's why constitution should not be violated by parliamentary law. Right? Yeah. So then in last, you can also talk about behavioral aspect. right? Behavioral aspect. In similarity, you can talk about like both have breach of privileges provision, right? And in behavioral aspect, you can talk about that there is very dignified debates and discussions in British Parliament, but Indian Parliament is often marked with disruptions or walkouts or noise, etc. For example, recent expulsion of 140 opposition members. You get the point? That also you can mark. And there is no misuse of breach of privilege power by Parliament of Britain since 1950s. But Indian Parliament is quite found to be in violation or misuse of power of breach of privilege. You get the point? So that you can write in last also. Clear? That will be your answer. So that's basically body part, similarity and differences. Now, how will you introduce your answer? Focus on how our forefathers took some elements from Britain and molded to fit our context. Yeah, that should be part of your answer. Now the question is how it will be made as part of your answer, right? Okay, introduction, what is parliamentary sovereignty, and conclusion, similarities flowchart model, yes, fine. Then conclusion could be making your opinion on these differences and similarities. You can talk about that British Parliament sovereignty is fit for British society, British culture, British history, and so on. The Indian parliamentary restrained or limited sovereignty is appropriate for Indian history, culture, and society, right? So both are right in their own place. Then you need to talk about that why there is such differences between Indian Parliament and British Parliament. Because see what happened. The first democratic government get established in UK. That was parliamentary form of government. The second democratic form of government get established in USA, and they adopted presidential form of government, right? Presidential form of government is nothing but aberration of parliamentary form of government. So what American constitutional forefathers did, they read and analyze British parliamentary form of government, and whatever shortcomings they found in British parliamentary form of government, they try to address it by creating a new form of government named as presidential form of government. You get the point? Because at that time they have only one democratic government to study. That's parliamentary form of government prevalent in Britain, right? So by making changes in it, they created their own form of government, later on named as presidential form of government. When our constitution was being formed, right, our constitutional forefathers has the privilege of reading both, analyzing both British form of government and also American form of government, that's parliamentary and presidential form of government. So what they did, they basically amalgamated both, integrated both, so to address the shortcomings of both systems, right? So to take best provisions, the favorable provisions of both system, right? That's why we have parliamentary sovereignty and also at the same time judicial supremacy. You get the point? Parliament can make any law, but at the same time it could be reviewed by judiciary, right? So that's why these differences exist between Indian and British parliamentary form of government. You get the point? So this could also be your conclusion. This could also be your conclusion. You get the point? Clear? So this should be there in your answer, and it will give the examiner that you thoroughly understand these concepts, right? An examiner will give you the maximum marks possible. Clear? So here a balanced, or you can say summarizing or conceptual understanding conclusion is being given, right? Clear? And how you will introduce your answer? By simply defining parliamentary sovereignty, because the question is revolving around the concept of parliamentary sovereignty. The parliamentary sovereignty concept says the parliament is supreme and parliament can make any kind of law, right, to regulate the affairs of society. Clear? The executive has to function in accordance with parliamentary law. Its assigned job is implementation of law, and judiciary also has to adjudicate the law for the violation of law, right? So that should be there in your introduction. So here definition based introduction will work. Clear? You get the point? Or if you are not able to define the concept, then what you can smartly do, you can talk about that India also adopted parliamentary form of government that's prevalent in Britain, but with certain aberrations or certain changes, right? So you are also setting the tone that what are the provisions we have kept of British parliamentary form of government in the similarity sections, and what changes we have made in Indian parliamentary system from British parliamentary system. You will write in differences section, right? That also could be your introduction, but better will be definition of parliamentary sovereignty. Clear? You get the point? Yes. Do see this question online, students, and also write your structure. Yes, please, every student should participate. You should give your input, how that the particular answer could be approached better, or what different thing you could do in your answer. Because do remember, whatever these answers I am showing in the slides is not the model answer. Model answer means best answer, the answer you should imbibe or inspire from. It is not the model answer. In fact, no coaching institute answers being given in their test series are the model answers. Model answer term is quite misnomer, is very wrong one, right? Because the model answer or the best answer will be actually yours. You get the point? So whatever you write will be the best answer, right? These answers are always the reference answer. Reference. Like you are not able to get how to introduce the answer, just see it, right? Or what broader points could be there, or what broader sections you need to address in the question, right? Or what could be one particular way of concluding the answer. That idea these answers give, but they are never the best answers. Best answers will always be yours. Like by these discussions we have found that you should write why the differences exist between Indian and British parliamentary system in conclusion. That's not there in the reference answer. If you write this, then only you will get the higher marks. You get the point? So basically your answer will be the best answer. For that purpose, you are collaborating in the class, you are giving your inputs, and I request and ask every online student to give your own inputs, how better approach the given question, or what different thing we can do in our answer, right? Then we will get to the best answer possible for addressing the given question. You get the point? So next is discuss the role of presiding officer of the state legislature in maintaining order and impartiality, in conducting legislative work, and in facilitating best democratic practices. Again a statement based question, right? So here, see, the question is about speaker, chairman, but of state legislature. The UPSC has specifically used the word state legislature. Generally we do in classes for parliament, right? So whatever the points discussed in your classes or in your text about role of presiding officer in parliament, the same is for state legislature, right? But you need to careful here to quote examples of state legislature here, not of parliament. You get the point? Then only this question will get addressed fully, right? So your example should be of state legislature. Then here you are being asked role, but you have been asked specifically the role of presiding officer in maintaining order first. Second, impartial conduct of legislative work. Second. Third is facilitating best democratic practices. So whatever role that we have discussed, suppose in class or in your textbooks, being written, right? That should be divided, like there are suppose 10 points there, right? That should be divided in maintaining order, in improving legislative work, and facilitating democracy. You get the point? So those points should be divided into these three sections. So it means there will be three subsections of your body part: role in order, role in legislative work, role in democratic practices, right? So that categorization of points you need to mention. Then the tail word is discuss, not explain, right? That's why you need to write limitations also, challenges also, and that need to be written in brief and concise manner, right? In broad manner. So that will be the basically body part. So body part is decided. Now, how will you set the premise? How will you set the introduction of your answer? Introduction, online students using Article 178, giving presiding officer to SLA, right? That you can mention the Article 78, 178, establish the office of presiding officers for state legislative assembly, right? That's one way, the constitutional article. Don't you think it will be part of the challenges that frequent disruptions are there and presiding officer is not able to control it, right? Challenges in flowchart: legislative role, bill power, house conduct, session role, judicial role, tabling motion. Yes, good, but need to be categorized in these three subheadings as per sub part of the questions. Challenges in flowchart. Okay, flowchart will consume this space, right? And you can draw flowchart also. But if this space is lacking, because this is 10 marks question, you can either write in paragraph or in bullet format, right? Introduction could be first in the constitutional article, or you can talk about the basic things about presiding officer. What actually the office of presiding officer is in the parliamentary system. Parliamentary system, presiding officer act as head of the house, right? Responsible for regulating the affairs or activities of the house, right? That you could write. Or you can give a current affair reference in this manner that recently conference of presiding officer was held, where the role of presiding officers of state legislature was discussed, right? So here, by this introduction, by current affair based contextual introduction, you are specifying to examiner, you are telling to examiner that you know that this was in news. You get the point? And the role of presiding officers were discussed. Clear? So that could be your introduction. What will be the role? For example, maintaining order and decorum by enforcing rules, right? Taking disciplinary action against the nuisance creating members. For example, in Odisha, certain MLAs hurled shoes at the speaker while debate was going on. So speaker suspend them, right? Or the session in Goa was suspended over sugar factory land acquisition, that the oppositions were creating ruckus. So thereby, speaker maintain order by adjourning the session, right? So these are examples you need to give. Then impartiality in conduct. The speaker is supposed to be above party lines, especially during deciding disciplinary cases or anti-defection cases. For example, you could give of speaker of Maharashtra deciding the disqualification of Uddhav Thackeray group or NCP group, which switched to other parties. Or you can take example of Karnataka, where the Congress MLAs and JDS MLA earlier switched to BJP, right? Or you can give example of speaker of Madhya Pradesh, where Congress MLAs switched to other party and so on, right? Or recognition of party leader as leader of opposition. You can give examples. For example, Sumitra Mahajan does not give leader of opposition tag to Congress leader when their party fell short of required 1/10 members, right? You get the point? Then facilitating democratic practices, for example, encouraging debate, giving adequate time to each member, especially of opposition. Right? The protecting minority versus small parties should given, or independent MLAs should be given due time to express their views, etc. Right? Or committee system, referring the bills, etc. to the particular committee, so that the committee could thoroughly examine it. Right? What are the challenges? Partisanship, right? Or not giving adequate time to opposition, or taking stringent action against opposition as compared to ruling party members, right? Or you can talk about the speaker appointment. You can talk about the speaker appointment time is not prescribed in constitution, right? So speaker office could remain vacant for long period of time. For example, it happened in Maharashtra, right? And so in many states, or deputy speaker office is vacant, and so on. Right? That challenges. Or you can talk about the speaker is lacking security of tenure. That's why he or she has to act biasedly. Lack of independence, and so on. The removal process is not stringent, right? So that you can write in challenges. And the conclusion will be suggestive one. Describe the solutions for strengthening the office of presiding officer. Right? You get the point? So reforms needed in conclusion. Clear? And one more trick is there. If you do not remember the reforms, if you are not able to find the solutions, then what you can do, whatever challenge you mention, issue mention, reverse it, you will get the solution. It provides security of tenure to speaker, or make the removal process stringent, right? Or strengthen the committee system, and so on. You can talk about also the UK system, where speaker resigned from the political party after getting elected, and even his or her seat is reserved for the next election, right? And so on. Yes, once a speaker, always a speaker. That also the quote you can use. Yeah, that's a good point. So here, just try to recall the broader news of state. For example, I've told about defections happened in Maharashtra, right? That you can call as example, right? Or suppose if you remember any incident of ruckus or disruption in any state assembly, for example in UP or in Jammu Kashmir assembly, etc. Just try to recall it and frame it as your example. Because speaker role is there, speaker must have adjourned the house for such ruckus. You can talk about that speaker adjourned the house because of such and such ruckus in that particular assembly. You get the point? You will not get the specific examples, but at least you will get the broader examples that you can phrase in such a manner that it fit the substantiation of your points. Get the point? Clear? Yes. So coming to the next question. Yes, online students, please write this one, intro, body and conclusion also, and the points. The Constitution of India is a living instrument with capabilities of enormous dynamism, right? And dynamism. It's a constitution made for progressive society. Illustrate with special reference to expanding origins of right to life and personal liberty. So it's very difficult question to deal with. The content is not difficult. Content is there with you. But how will you address this question? Requires an art. Right? So first is tail word. Illustrate. It means you have to give examples. Right? Then there is a context being set that you need to talk about right to life and personal liberties, expanding origins, like how the right to life and personal liberty is broadly or widely, leniently, liberally interpreted by Supreme Court. How this become a composite right, including so many implied rights, right? Then how it is ensuring Constitution being a living instrument, Constitution evolving dynamism, right? That also you need to address, right? Then how Constitution is a living instrument with having capabilities of enormous dynamism, you need to also specify, right? So first keyword is living instrument. Why Constitution is a living instrument? Because it can adapt itself, change itself, amend itself, right, as per changing needs, demands, circumstances, conditions of society. Because whatever is living is growing, is changing, is molding. Whatever is dead is static, is rigid. Because dead bodies are static and rigid in nature. Living persons are changing, evolving. Get the point? So you need to talk about amending powers of Constitution, right? Enormous dynamism. For that purpose, you need to specify that most of the provisions of Constitution can be changed by parliamentary law or by passing constitutional amendment bill in Parliament and getting assented by President. Only few provisions which relate to federal provisions can be amended by Parliament coupled with state ratifications. So most of the Constitution could be changed easily. You get the point? So that's ensure enormous dynamism. And how actually it is being ensured, that also you need to write. For example, Constitution has been amended so many times in the past, right? For example, for state reorganization, 7th Constitutional Amendment Act, right? Or 42 Constitutional Amendment Act, inserting secularism in preamble, or 44 Constitutional Amendment Act, putting checks on arbitrary use of power during emergency by the executive, right? Or 73-74 Constitutional Amendment Act, creating a third tier of government, right? And recent 101 Constitutional Amendment Act dealing with GST, right? 103 dealing with EWS, then 106 dealing with women reservation in Parliament, right? 86 Constitutional Amendment Act dealing with right to education, 52 dealing with anti-defection, right? 91 capping the size of Union Council of Ministers, and so on. You get the point? So this shows that as the society is evolving, Constitution is also changing. Clear? That makes the Constitution still relevant for people because it is serving the needs of people, right? Then you need to talk about how the Supreme Court widely interpret the right to life and personal liberty. First, by Menka Gandhi case, where procedure established by law is interpreted as due process of law, right? Then Uni Krishnan case, where Supreme Court says right to life includes right to dignified life, not mere animal existence, right? So all these things which make humans' life meaningful, substantive, etc. are part of right to life. You get the point? Then right to personal liberty, which include removal of all the restrictions which are necessary for overall development of the individual, right? So if you remember the case laws like MC Mehta or Navtoj Singh Johar case and so on, then write it, right? As many as case laws you remember, you can write it, right? Indra Sani case, putting reservation limit, or Vishaka guidelines and so on. And if you do not remember the case laws, right, then write Supreme Court has interpreted right to life and personal liberty to include so many implied rights. For example, right to live, or right to go abroad, or right to choose life partner, right? Right against sexual harassment, right to livelihood, right to shelter, right to food, right to education, and so on. Clear? So that you need to write. So let's see basically factual content part. So tailword is illustrate, right? So this you need to be illustrate with case laws or Supreme Court verdicts, right? And this you need to elaborate with 73, various constitutional amendment acts, 7th, 52, 73, 74, and so on, right? But you need to give many analytical points also. Analytical points. Because why Constitution is so dynamic? Because constitutional survival depends on dynamism. If it does not evolve, it does not change, then the people will throw Constitution into dustbin. Because Constitution will lose its utility. For example, people in last 20 years were demanding reservation. General caste were demanding reservation for poor amongst them. That's why Constitution got evolved. by including economically weaker section, right? The people were demanding that basic services are being delivered to them, like street lighting, street roads, cleanliness, etc. That's why 73-74 Constitutional Amendment Act created panchayats and municipalities. You get the point? Constitution want a fairer politics. A fairer politics. That's why anti-defection law came into being. You get the point? So that analysis you need to give. And for this also you need to give, like during emergency, the rights were taken away by the authoritarian abuse of power of emergency under Article 352, right? Because judiciary did the remorse by expanding the rights. The constitution were not able to make the directive principles enforceable because at that time the country was lacking resources and so on. But the Supreme Court, by liberally interpreting Article 21, includes socio-economic rights into the ambit of fundamental rights. You get the point? So, liberal interpretation of right to life ensure that people are able to enjoy their liberties, right? State is able to serve people by way of making provisions for health, nutrition, education, etc. Right? And citizens are able to live a dignified life. Yeah. So that analysis also should be part of your answer. Now the question arises, how will you structure such a large information in your answer? And how will you maintain the logical flow? You get the point? That's the real art in these kind of questions. Right? Otherwise, the questions that we have discussed are more or less direct, little bit creative, or the application of mind is required to answer. But here, your whole creativity, your whole application of mind will be tested. Clear? Yes, online students has given. Let's see. The introduction will be substantiate statement with idea of flexibility of constitution, not stringent but evolving characteristics. Article 13, state include wide variety of organization, that you can avoid. Keep up with protection of rights for citizens, power to Supreme Court, include rights by interpreting natural justice as society evolve, right? Case laws, pensions, yes, Navjot Singh Johar, yes, Puttu Swami case also you can talk about, right to privacy, right? And conclusion, reform needed for increasing the dynamism. And you need to talk about basic structure also. Certain things are static in nature because of principle of basic feature, right? Core is static, but periphery is tangible. Where the point? Fair try, online student. So how will you try this question? Like how will you structure such ample information? Fifteen. So 15 marks question, you will be given 3 pages. But first page 25% will be occupied by question. Like you have 2.75 pages. Right? First, talk about Article 368 provides for amendment of the Constitution. Then specify the necessity why such amendment is required. Right? Necessity is to keep Constitution in line with changing, evolving societal order. Right? Keeping it in dynamic form. Right? Making it a living document. You get the point? That should be your introduction. Why Constitution need to be dynamic, right? And start with Article 368. Clear? Then start your first body part, right? First is write this phrase, capabilities of enormous dynamism. How it has capability of enormous dynamism. For example, most of the provisions, many provisions could be amended by parliament by simply law. For example, article 2, 3, right? Or deciding the quorum of the house, or deciding the parliamentary privileges, and so on, right? Second, majority of the provisions could be amended by parliament by constitutional amendment act. Talk about DPSP, right? For example, the this 42 constitutional amendment act provides article 39A providing free legal aid, right? 86 constitutional amendment act added a new fundamental duty, and so on. Then talk about that few provisions required parliament plus state ratification, affecting federal interest, and that too is also easily passed, because in most of the cases it is found that ruling party at the center has governments in majority of the states, right? Give the example of GST, 73, 70, Panchayati Raj institution, local bodies, etc. So here you are specifying that it has huge capabilities of dynamism. Then couple it with judicial interpretations. Judiciary can also amend the constitution by its interpretation, right? For example, Keshwanand Bharti case, basic structure doctrine, which keeps certain provisions static and others changeable. Or you can talk about Menka Gandhi case, Minerva Mill case, theory of harmonization between fundamental rights and DPSP, Indira Sani case, we are putting 50% limit on reservation, right? And so on. Clear? So judiciary also interpret the constitution, change the constitution. So you are setting the premise for next part of the question also, right? This part get addressed. Third is a living instrument. Make another subheading, that is a living instrument, right? Under this, you need to specify how it is living instrument, how it is getting changed in last 75 years, right? For example, talk about when the society needs the creation of new states on the basis of language, 7th Constitutional Amendment Act was passed. When the society needs checks on arbitrary use of executive power, 44 Constitutional Amendment Act was passed, right? When the society needs to enforce equality in the society, 25th Constitutional Amendment Act got passed to abolish pre-weepers or the titles of Maharajas, etc., right? When the society needs fair politics, 52 Constitutional Amendment Act passed, right? And when society needs a government closer to it to serve its basic needs, 73 Constitutional Amendment Act passed, and so on. You get the point? So that's basically through constitutional amendment acts you will prescribe how it is living document. You get the point? And in this section also you will add judicial interpretations. Judiciary also keeps the constitution living and dynamic by interpreting it as per changing needs of the society. For example, upholding Article 370 abrogation, or decriminalizing homosexuality, decriminalizing adultery, right? Or right to choose life partner, or you can talk about this upholding EWS reservation, rejecting in 1993 but upholding 2021, right? So here also you will include judicial interpretation. You get the point? So first statement get addressed. Now it also says right to life and personal liberty, right? Here after this you will make a special heading, that expanding origin of right to life and personal liberty. Expanding origin of right to life and personal liberty, right? Because it will continue from other judicial it will continue from judicial interpretation of other provisions of the Constitution, right? Now you will make a special reference to expanding origin of right to life and personal liberty. There you will talk about that Supreme Court in Menka Gandhi case interpreted as due process of law. Then in Uni-Christian's case give the concept of right to dignified life, right? And then personal liberty definition also given. Then the various implied rights are being given by Supreme Court under this: right to education, or right to travel abroad, right to health, right to nutrition, right to shelter, livelihood, and so on. You get the point? This also get addressed, right? Then how will you now conclude the answer? They see, do remember, tell what is illustrate. Now do not analyze it. Do not find limitations, or do not try to explain the significance, etc. here. You get the point? Because here the tail word is illustrate. Illustrate means explain with examples. You get the point? You need to just explain the statement with examples, right? So if you write here limitations, examiner will deduct marks for it. Clear? Because you are writing what is not being asked by the question. So here, how will you conclude? That constitution should be a living document, but certain features should remain static, as highlighted or specified by Supreme Court in Keshavanand Bharti case, right? But constitution overall should remain in sync with society. Yeah, if if constitution need to be alive for coming decades or centuries, right, or ages, then it has to be evolving or changing. And you can also give a value-based conclusion. That's change is law of nature. Change is permanent. So such changes should be regularly be there in constitution also. You get the point? So value-based conclusion also you can give here. So conclusion, reform needed for increasing the dynamism. What kind of reforms you will give? I think here opinion-based, a futuristic, value-based conclusion will be ripe, right? Because you have not mentioned any limitation in dynamic nature of constitution, right? Because it is not asked by the question. That's why avoid suggestions. Clear? And in body part article 13 you are referring, please avoid it because it is not asked in question. Clear? You need to be careful. You have huge information in your mind. You need to be careful, choosy what information to be put in your answer. And that basically depends on what is being asked by the question. You get the point? Clear? So, see, one more mistake I found in student answers. They make way forward as default conclusion for their answers. For every question they are writing way forward. It means suggestions. Don't do it. Right? Way forward actually is a good conclusion. But only for those answers where issues or challenges are being asked. Right? But if your opinion is being asked or you have to just explain the concept, their way forward conclusion will not fit, right? There you have to give your own opinion. Their conclusion will be shorter, like 4 or 5 lines, where you are giving just your opinion in futuristic way or in summarizing way or your own lines of wisdom, right? Or any supported by value or quotation and so on. You get the point? Clear? So far so clear? Heading through 2-3 more questions are left and it will be over. Now coming to the next question. Here it says explain the constitutional perspective of gender justice with the help of relevant constitutional provisions and case laws. It means constitutional provisions you have to mention and also Supreme Court verdicts, case laws. So that should act as your examples, right? Question is itself saying, and the tail word is explain. Explain. Do not here analyze it. Never ever mention here significance or challenges. Please. If you write it, marks will be deducted. Get the point? So here you need to focus on constitutional perspective of gender justice. How constitution is trying to provide or ensure gender justice. That you need to specify and that need to be substantiated with provisions and case laws. That's basically the question demand that you need to address. So that's the body part, right? Now how will you introduce these? How will you write introduction for this question? You can explain gender justice. That also could be there. That at the time of independence or even as of now, gender inequality exists in Indian society, right? As evident from relatively lower literacy rate of women, lower women participation in jobs, that's around 27%, right? Then lower female participation in politics, like 15% around women members in parliament, right? And so on. Clear? Then constitution tries to ensure gender justice by various provisions, right? Or you can talk about that constitutional forefathers were aware of gender injustice being prevalent in society, gender inequality, gender discrimination, oppression, exploitation, right? By way of not allowing women's education or jobs or health service or nutrition and so on. That's why constitution tried to address it by this perspective. That also could be your introduction. Or gender justice definition could be there, right? Or you can talk about significance of gender equality in introduction, 2-3 lines. That if half of the population of the society get empowered, then only society can progress. You get the point? And constitution tried to achieve it through these perspectives. Clear? What else could be? I think that's, and what's so special about this question is, it is interlinking two subjects. The gender equality, gender justice, women empowerment, etc. you read in society, right? You only read about constitutional provisions for gender equality, gender justice in polity. So here your knowledge of society will help you to write a good answer in this question, right? And UPSC is quite fond of asking questions which interlink two concepts, right? Maybe from same subject, or interlink two concepts from two different subjects. So here concepts of society and polity has been interlinked. You get the point? And one more question we will do of GST. Their concept of economy is linked with concept of polity. You get the point? No, one thing is there. If you read the syllabus of GS paper 1 to 4 of mains, UPSC has never, or UPSC has nowhere mentioned the words like world history, the words like geography, modern history, or society, social justice, governance, polity, ethics, and so on. Except in ethics paper, it has categorically mentioned that it is ethics paper. Otherwise, GS paper 1 to 3, nowhere it is mentioned. It has just listed out the topics, right? That's why you will find IR question in GS paper 1, or poverty question in GS paper 1, underdevelopment question in GS paper 1. You get the point? And sometimes geography questions in paper 3. You get the point? Because these questions are remotely or indirectly linked with the given topics mentioned for that particular paper, right? So that's why your answer should be multidimensional. Never ever restrict yourself to just polity perspective. Suppose a poverty question is being asked on poverty. Never restrict, suppose causes of poverty has been asked. So never ever restrict yourself to the economic causes of poverty, because it is being asked in GS paper 3. Write about social causes also, right? Or maybe political causes, cultural causes, and so on. Clear? So make your answer multidimensional. But it does not mean that every answer need to be multidimensional. Sometimes question restrict the dimensions of your answer. For example, in this, we have been just asked constitutional perspective of gender justice. So here question is restricting your dimension. You get the point? That's, you need to talk about the various dimensions are there in constitution. If it is being, question could also be framed in this manner also, what are the different perspectives of gender justice, right? So that will be a kind of a question which required many dimensions, right? Or could be a, suppose, political perspective of gender justice, social perspective, legal perspective, right? Or cultural perspective, technological perspective, ethical perspective, and so on. You get the point? But here This question is restricting your understanding or your answer to constitutional perspective. But the constitutional perspective or the constitution use multiple perspectives for gender justice, use various sociological theories to ensure gender justice. You get the point? That's why this question is linked to society. You get the point? Because constitution is also based on various political theories, various social theories, right? Or various economic theories and so on. That theory's perspective you need to highlight, or sociological theories perspective on gender justice enshrined or mentioned in constitution, right? Implicit in constitution, you need to mention here. You get the point? Sir, can we use data for gender injustice in introduction, importance of gender equality for good governance like accountability, representation? That also you can talk about. Gender equality importance not only for good governance but also for overall societal progress or economic development, right? Or for smooth political functioning and so on. That you can mention. But that should be in crisp. It's a 15-mark question, so you have the leeway to write 5 to 6 lines of introduction, right? But introduction should be minimum 4 lines for this question and maximum 6 lines, right? In that you can talk about the importance of gender justice or equality, right? Now coming to the constitutional perspective, that's the first body part you need to address. So what is the constitutional perspective for gender justice? Yeah, try to frame it in analytical perspective. See, constitutional protective is, for example, you can talk about empowering provisions, right? For example, recent 106 Constitutional Amendment Act, one-third seats reservation for women in state legislature and parliament. You get the point? Then, or you can talk about one-third seats reservation by 73 and 74 Constitutional Amendment Act, right? Second, you can talk about protective provisions. For example, Article 14 gives you equality before law. That's a statutory perspective, right? Then you can talk about Article 15 also, and Article 14 also gives you equal protection of law. Article 15 mandates state to make special provisions for advancement of women. That's why government makes so many schemes for women like Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, where 5,000 rupees is given to pregnant women, right? Or under Food Security Act, free ration is being given to women, or LPG cylinders are being given to women, or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, houses are being constructed in the name of women, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao and so on, right? That's basically ensuring 15, right? So there you can talk about this Article 15 you can put in, or equal protection of law you can put in enabling provisions. Here the state is being enabled to make special efforts for women. That's the third perspective. Yeah, that you can put in protective provisions like Article 39A, equal right of livelihood for both men and women, right? Or equal wages for both men and women, Article 39, I think D, and so on, right? That will be in protective. It means women are being protected against discrimination. Clear? That's basically protective. Then what else you can add? In this also you need to add cases. For example, in empowering, you can talk about even increase the ambit like rights to transgenders given by Supreme Court, that mandated reservation for transgenders, right? or is that there? Are you sure? You can talk about this in enabling that cooperative society, right to form cooperative society in which majorly members are women, especially in self-help groups. It was there in board of directors for corporates, where 1/3 seats are reserved for women, not in cooperatives. Right? That also you can talk about. And what you can talk about right against sexual harassment, Vijaka guidelines, empowering. Right? Right to choose life partner, as interpreted as part of right to life, or right to live in, that's also part of right to life and personal liberty. Right? So it is empowering women to assert their choices. Clear? Then protective provisions may Supreme Court verdicts you can talk about. This protective that you can talk about women in defense forces. Supreme Court allow, right? Protective. Women are not discriminated in defense force, or women are being allowed to enter temples, Sabrimala, Haji Ali Dargah, Shanicharai temple, and so on. Right? Enabling. You can talk about right to health, right to food, or right to shelter, or even Supreme Court asked to run shelter homes for women in destitute, or women is being provided free legal aid. You get the point? These things you can talk about. And more thing you can add, like the substantive perspective, that also you can add. For example, reservation, or procedural perspectives. For example, UPSC giving UPSC providing, or UPSC does not charge women for application form to civil service examination. That's procedural one. You get the point? So that you can add. Clear? So that two more perspectives you can add. Clear? So in both substantive and procedural manner, women are being supported by the Constitution to realize her true potential. You get the point? And how will you conclude? How will you conclude? That gender justice should also include now transgenders. That one opinion you can give. Opinion-based conclusion I think would be better here. You can talk about certain suggestions for further empowering women. Right? You can talk about reservation of civil service jobs for women. Right? Or allowing women in all defense forces. Like women role is little bit restricted in defense forces, it's not allowed in first line of defense. We should allow women, right? Or we need to ensure that these provisions get realized through effective implementation of these provisions. For that we need to provide quality education, quality health, quality nutrition, etc. to women, right? So keyword is explained, so do not go into limitations, just end your answer with certain more suggestions for empowering women, right? And how will you specify suggestions? By making a line that of this effective implementation of these provisions required by these measures. Get the point? Clear? Yes. Can we use data for gender introduction? You can write yes. Right? Clear? And preamble. Don't forget to write preamble also. Equality, justice provisions are there. Right? And fundamental duty also you need to mention. Clear? In Joseph Stein case also you can mention where adultery is being decriminalized. Clear? Then coming to the next question, account for the legal and political factors responsible for reduced frequency of using Article 356 by Union government since mid 1990s. What does it mean? That Article 356 is being used less frequently and there are legal and political factors for it. You need to write legal factors separately and political factor separately, right? And you need to account for. It means you have to just mention, right? So you can start your answer with Article 356, 355, 365, like why Article 356 imposed and on what grounds it is being imposed and what is the consequence of it, right? In brief, in introduction, right? Then mention legal factors. First is SR Mumbai case, where Supreme Court says judicial review can happen, floor test should be conducted, right, to determine whether the party in power lose the majority or not, right? And this should not be exercised in malified manner, and Supreme Court has the power to restore state legislative assembly or state executive if they are dismissed wrongfully, right? And you have to give examples also, for example, Arunachal or Uttarakhand recently and so on. Clear? Then you need to talk about this legal factor, 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, which says that beyond that you need frequent approvals of Parliament. No, there was amendment by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act also, that after every 6 months you need parliamentary approval, and if you want to extend president rule beyond 1 year, then you need election commission certification that elections can't be held in that particular state, right? So that's basically done by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Clear? So now what are the political factors after 90s? Oh, yes, and in this judicial activism also you can make a point that judiciary also become very assertive in proactive in protecting states from getting arbitrarily dismissed, right? In political factors, regional coalition governments came. That's why union government cannot dismiss their partners state government, right? Their partner parties ruled state governments, because otherwise their partner parties, allied parties, will withdraw support to the ruling party at the center, and ruling party will lose the majority, thereby losing the power, right? Then second, you can talk about the people are now intolerant of arbitrary dismissal of their state government, right? So that's why they punish the ruling party at the center in the next elections, whether in state or center. The media and civil society is now quite active, judiciary is quite active, right? Or now the democracy in India is also matured, where not by state dismissals but by elections, by fighting in next elections, ruling party at the center try to get power in state. For example, in Delhi, right, they did not dismiss Kejriwal government, but they fight in next elections to get the power. Get the point? BJP get the power. Clear? That also you can talk about, that governor power is now getting restricted, or governor also is supposed to uphold the spirit of Sarkariya commissions or Punchi commission recommendations, right? Get the point? So that basically you need to write here. Then in conclusion, what you will do? Tail word is account. Here you can skip the analysis part, right? Because simply you need to mention the points, right? In conclusion, you need to write that still Article 56 is being misused, for example, in Uttarakhand or in Arunachal, where Supreme Court has to intervene, right? So for that, we need to further strengthen the knuckles on Article 356 by incorporating Sarkariya commissions and Punchi commission recommendations. For example, it should be measure of last resort. President should specify the reasons for imposing Article 356. It should be restricted in the limited part of the state if it is being because of internal disturbance, right, and so on. So that you can write in conclusion. So Sarkariya commission recommendations, smartly you can add in conclusion, not directly. Do not make an heading that Sarkariya commission recommendations. No, write first that still it is being misused. So to further prevent it, these recommendations need to be followed. Clear? You get the point? Now coming to the next, explain the structure of parliamentary committee system. How far have the financial committees helped in the institutionalization of Indian Parliament, right? So how will you start the answer? Parliamentary committees, right? Role of parliamentary committees: help to reduce the workload of Parliament, save the time, provide the expertise, and so on. Then structure is being asked. So here flowchart will help you, like parliamentary committees, then standing committee, ad hoc committee. Ad hoc committee of two types, inquiry committee and advisory committee. Inquiry committee suppose on investigation of 2G scam, right, or on food quality or Bofo scam examples. Then here ad hoc committee examples like on bills, sorry, advisory committee examples like JPC on Lok Adalat, sorry, JPC on Lokpal and Lokayut bill, right, give examples here. So in standing committee, you can talk about financial committees, mentioned it, public account committee on public undertaking and estimates committee. Then DRCs, right, 24 in number, right, shadow committee, for example, committee on health, committee on education and so on. Just 2-3 examples, do not mention all the committees. Then committee on inquiry, right, then committee on papers laid on the parliament, or committee on government scrutiny, right, or committee on the functioning of the house, which includes general committee, business advisory committee, rules committee and so on, right. So here whatever the committees you remember, mention it. For example, this is this, for example, this is this. You may not remember each and every committee under committee on inquiry, right, committee on scrutiny, or committee on functioning of legislature and so on, right. 1 or 2 committee you may remember, just write it as examples. Get the point? So by flowchart, you should attempt this first part of the question. Second is financial committees. How far? Till what is how far? It means you have to do analysis, importance and challenges. Helped in institutionalization of Indian Parliament. Institutionalization, right? So you see the points of significance you have to write here, but it need to be rephrased in such manner that it address this phrase of the question, right? So how financial committees help? For example, DRCs, for example, Public Accounts Committee helps to examine bulky technical complex reports of CAG, right? It helps to have monitoring over the expenditure by the executive throughout the year by estimates committee, right? Or then you have to write about that this estimates committee also recommend efficiency in expenditure, right? All the public sector undertakings reports, annual reports and CAG reports get examined by committee on public undertaking. And DRC also played certain financial function by examining demand for grants of respective ministries during the budget and so on. And you need to give examples also. You need to give examples also. For example, estimates committee recommend the overhaul of BSNL, so to reduce its losses, or overhaul of National Thermal Power Corporation, so to reduce coal imports, right? Or committee on public undertakings recommended earlier the revival of Air India through restructuring, mergers, etc., right? Or committee on public accounts committee recommended, for example, or highlighted the corruption in 2G scam or the scam in Mela management and so on. But that was not financial committee. Financial committees are 3, right? So here they can seek outside experts services or can interact with public, or it gives representation to political parties, especially in opposition, and also the smaller parties, because the proportional representation by means of single transferable vote is followed, right? Chairman is normally from opposition party, especially a public accounts committee. So these things get institutionalized here, right? What is institutionalized? Smaller party representation, opposition party's presence, opposition leader being chairman, they were holding executive accountable throughout examination of government expenditure, the bulky reports, reading, summarizing, examining of CAG or annual reports of public sector undertaking sector. These things get institutionalized, right? Regularized. That's why these committees have their role. Challenges you need to write, like their tenure is short, members' tenure is short, that's around 1 year, right? Then their recommendations are recommendatory, post-mortem work they do, right? And they are not able to examine each and every organization reports and so on. Clear? and you need to write then suggestions also, like they should be provided experts, or more manpower should be given, or their meeting should be regularized, their functioning should be oversight by a separate parliamentary committee, right? Or their meetings could be made public by live streaming and so on, just like in America. You get the point? So these suggestions you need to write. So there you can mention law commission recommendation or Sarkaria commission recommendation, second ARC recommendation, etc. Second ARC recommended oversight committee to oversee their functioning, whether they are functioning properly or not. Get the point? That's basically the part of your answer. Clear? Last is, I think, significance of 101 Constitutional Amendment Act. To what extent it reflects the accommodative spirit of federalism. We must embody the idea of Ambedkar and make this provision a dead one. That you can write in Article 56, that Ambedkar visualized Article 56 to be a dead letter. So it's high time that we put so much restrictions on arbitrary use of Article 56 that it becomes a dead letter, right? That also you can mention in conclusion. That's also a good conclusion. Clear? So you are giving a futuristic hope that such Article 56 is never misused. Clear? Is rarely used. Get the point? So last is 101 Constitutional Amendment Act. So UPSC never asks factual questions, right? That is the perception we have. So here you have been asked 101 Constitutional Amendment Act. But actually it's not a factual question. The significance of 101 Constitutional Amendment Act is asked, right? So, but unless and until you do not remember the Constitutional Amendment Acts, you can't answer this question. So you need to remember certain facts. So how to answer this question, analytical part, right? So UPSC now have this habit of asking these kind of questions, like what is IR case? If you do not remember what is IR case, then you can't write what's the significance of IR case. You get the point? So do remember this silent Constitutional Amendment Acts, articles, Supreme Court verdicts, right? Then only you will be able to ask the analytical part being asked in the question. So 101 Constitutional Amendment Act, if you do not remember, try to read this second part, how it reflects the accommodative spirit of federalism. Try to remember which recent Constitutional Amendment Act deals with federalism. It was GST. Right? Recent Constitutional Amendment Acts are of National Judicial Appointment Commission, EWS, Women Reservation and so on. Out of it, there is one GST. So it must be relating to GST. You get the point? The question is significance. Here also your economy subject is linked with polity because you have been asked significance. You need to write the political administrative significance. That's it promotes cooperative federalism between center and state because both are getting together in deciding the tax rates, right? Then you need to write economic aspects also because it raises the tax collections, it ease out the lives of people in paying the taxes, right? And so on. Then that's basically significance part. Introduction, how you can do with, you can specify what is 101 Constitutional Amendment Act all about. That's GST, subsume many center and state taxes, right? That could be introduction. And to what extent it reflects the accommodative spirit of federalism. For that, the tail word is to what extent. So you need to write arguments in favor and against. So how it promotes that both center and state are getting together, and this decision will be taken by 3/4 majority in GST Council, right? And there will be uniform taxation throughout the state, throughout the country, and it will benefits more the consumer states, like that are also the backward states of the country, right? And there is integrated GST for interstate trade that basically ensure that interstate trade is facilitated and so on. And what are the concerns? That the ruling party at the center has major say in the decisions of GST Council because 1/3 votes are with center and for you require 3/4 votes. So what is lacking is 40% vote. That 40% vote you get from your own party ruled state finance ministers. You get the point? And then state lose their autonomy to impose their own taxes, and it sometimes against the states also because you get a share in GST and that share may be not enough to meet your state demands. You get the point? Then you can talk about that states are dependent on GST compensation, and GST compensation was meant for only 5 years, right? So that thing you can mention. Clear? So it is entering the accommodative spirit of federalism. Clear? So here in significance, you can talk about political, administrative, governance, economic, etc. significance, right? But in second, about whether it promotes accommodative spirit of federalism or not, here you need to restrict yourself to polity part. Clear? If the question is restricting your answer to polity part. Clear? You get the point? So that's all about GST question, and by this all of the polity questions of 2023 mains GS paper 2 get covered, right? And we will meet in another session. So whatever we discussed today is clear to you? Yes, online students, is it clear to all of you? Any doubt? So I hope you must have learned something from this session. I wish you a very happy learning. Thank you very much.